money flows to XRP, and frankly, it has been in very notable ways year after year after year after year, basically since the inception of XRP itself. And I've actually got 3 stories to share with you to bring that point. I'll briefly touch on this one first. That's the Digital Asset Fund Flows Weekly Report. This shows money for a single week flowing into XRP. And spoiler alert, it's looking pretty damn good. And this is on an institutional level, mind you. Then there's this story from the Crypto Basic. Here is possible XRP price by 2035 if XRPL introduces fee burning like Ethereum's EIP-1559. And I'll tell you this at the outset here. The idea that the XRP ledger should be more like Ethereum, which is more costly for payments, I'm a bit skeptical about that one. And I'll tell you why they're arguing what they're arguing, but it's completely ridiculous. And then there's also this, a Ripple model is to spend money in a way to maximize XRP value, Ripple CTO once said. Okay, and this is being published at a rather opportune time because some of you may have seen, if you're on X, there's been a particular individual suffering from the affliction known as XRP derangement syndrome, has been flapping his gums lately, saying a bunch of stupid, truly stupid shit about XRP. And I'm going to share with you a piece of an argument between him and one of the more well-known figures in the XRP community. And it's silly nonsense, and it's kind of fun to just rip those arguments to shreds. Because the truth of the matter is, like, whether you're a huge fan of Ripple or not, it doesn't really matter. You're not entitled to your own facts. And the facts show that Ripple has been a fantastic cheerleader for the entirety of the XRP ecosystem since inception. Because our interests as XRP holders are very aligned with Ripple's in a lot of ways, especially the dollars and cents. But before going, check out this Digital Asset Fund Flows Weekly Report. This is written by James Butterfill that's a fun last name, over at CoinShares, and this shows money flowing into various assets for a 1-week period. So this is the data available as of the close of October 24th of this year. So the 7 days leading up to that. And here you can see XRP not looking too damn shabby. So Bitcoin, it's normally the case, Bitcoin is up the highest, 931 million in institutional flows in a single week. Ethereum down 168 million. Solana up 29 million. And then there's XRP up 84.3 million. $84.3 million on an institutional level index. And this is at a time when all sorts of people are fearful. Can you imagine? Like, if you've been here for several years, if I told you what XRP was like 25 cents, if we were just hanging out, one day, XRP is going to be around like $2.60, and people are going to be fearful about that. It would just be comical. And I know a lot of you listening, you actually were there when XRP was 25 cents. And we always believed we'd get to this level. And yes, of course, I always knew that regardless of the price level, there's always going to be somebody who doesn't think big picture long-term enough, who in the moment is just going to be fearful. But if you've been here for several years, it does seem a little bit so. It's like the asset just keeps going up, and do you think it's stopping here? Because I sure as hell don't. But it is good to see this. I'm just pointing out that on an institutional level, and a lot of this ends up being the quote-unquote smart money that behaves different than the typical lemming retail speculators. Yeah, they're throwing the money in at a time when people are freaking out. And then we have this. It's about XRP, and some people are arguing that in terms of fees getting burnt on the XRP ledger, it should copy Ethereum. Basically, in a nutshell, I don't want to read the article to be too much of a time waster, but the key takeaway here is that there's an argument being made that in order to make XRP more valuable, basically, we should burn more XRP. Should burn more XRP to make it even more scarce. Of course, the consequence of that is that you make transactions more expensive. So depending on the specific parameters, perhaps it's a very bad idea to do that because XRP just works. You know why? You understand. So there's all sorts of utility for XRP, all sorts of businesses building on top of the XRP ledger, obviously. But it's also the technical attributes at its core that people find desirable. It just works. It does what Bitcoin can't. It does what Bitcoin was supposed to be able to do. which is perform as a peer-to-peer cash system. Okay. That was written by Satoshi Nakamoto in the original Bitcoin white paper, which was released, I believe it was on Halloween in 2008. And then Bitcoin ultimately launched in early 2009. And Bitcoin technologically pure garbage. Compared to XRP, I mean, it's got desirable technical attributes that people like, but in terms of actually using the layer 1 technology, you can't, not really, because it's too clunky. The transactions take too long to process, and they're too expensive. They just are. Then XRP comes along, and it's just broadly speaking, XRP is fantastic for payments, just broadly speaking. They're so fast, they're effectively real time. They're so cheap. Fractions of a penny, they might as well be free. And the only reason that there is an XRP burning mechanism is to prevent spam of the network, because if you're trying to spam the network, it's not that much per transaction, but you need to have tons of transactions to even potentially slow it down. But then when you do that, incrementally, the cost per transaction goes up. And so for people who are not abusing the XRP Ledger, the incremental increase, it'll still be so small that you're not really going to notice it. But if you're trying to massively attack the XRP Ledger, you're not going to. And then you're going to burn all that money. And then as soon as you stop, it just goes back to normal anyway. You're back at baseline. And what have you accomplished? Precisely nothing. But if you're talking about increasing the fee to burn more XRP, depending on what level you're talking about, you're probably just going to make it a whole lot less effective. Now, XRP, unquestionably, it is scarce. I know that 100 billion figure total supply of XRP sounds big to people, but if you were to evenly distribute that to humans across the planet, then each human could only have like 11 or 12 XRP, like quite literally. That's the way the math works out. So have you ever wondered though, like how long would it take for XRP, if, just to be completely burnt, for all of the XRP to be burnt, if it's just getting used, how long would that take? And of course, you can't know for sure, and it's a hypothetical, because you don't know exactly what the transaction fee will be, because it could be, it could be amended, it would take an amendment to change that, but that can happen. So it could go up, also, to what degree is XRP going to be adopted and for what things? Because the more it gets adopted for, the more transactions, the more XRP gets burnt. So these are things you can't know for sure. And that's why I went ahead and talked to ChatGPT here. And I just asked it to come up with some hypotheticals here on its own. And it did just that. And so as you can see on your screen here, I asked ChatGPT how long it would take for all XRP to be burned in various scenarios. And so you can see here, and these are the factors you'd want to consider, is what is the transaction fee? And it could be a number of things. So if it changes, it could go higher. Then how much XRP is being burnt per day? And then you can do a quick equation here to figure out with those factors, how many years it would take to burn every single XRP in existence. And the answer is, as you can see on the screen right here, if you're considering any of the hypotheticals that might be within the realm of possibility here, it would take thousands of years, or it would take hundreds of thousands of years to burn all the XRP, or perhaps even millions. And so you'd have to look at the screen here. I'm not going to read through all of this, but if you want to look at the various hypotheticals that ChatGPT came up with, you can see, like, we're not going to run out of XRP. That was a conclusion order. It's like, we'll never run out of XRP. And it's funny. There were a handful of people that saw this and were asking why I was bear posting. I was really caught off guard by that. Like they said, a couple of people claiming that I was posting FUD here. I wrote this and I was like, oh, this is great. Because if XRP were on a trajectory because of usage and fees, if it were on a trajectory because it's deflationary, to get to a point where it's going to go to zero, that would be bad, okay? Nobody would freaking invest in XRP for anything if there's not going to be anything left, any of it left in short order, because the transaction fees are so high that it's going to result in all of the XRP getting burnt. You do not want that. So when I posted this obviously positive thing where I wrote, we'll never run out of XRP, even though it's deflationary, that's a positive. Oh my God, I was so surprised and caught off guard by the handful of people that didn't get that. Now, almost everyone understood that's obviously a very good thing. And it's good. Like, the reason that this even exists, this burning, it's not to make XRP more scarce, though that is what it does by a little bit. It's to prevent spam of the network. but almost no XRP has ever been, I think it's only like 14 million XRP since inception has been burned out of 100 billion. That's almost nothing. Percentage-wise, that is almost nothing. So this is good stuff here. So as a result, more money will keep flowing to the XRP ledger because it's not going away. This is a good thing. So if you want the price to go up, you know what we should really focus on is demand increasing, not burning XRP. It's silly nonsense here. And then we have this Ripple model is to spend money in a way to maximize XRP value, Ripple CTO once said. And so I'm highlighting this. This is very opportune. I'm glad this article popped up at a time when we've gotten a bunch of idiot sticks, or well, there's one in particular I'm going to highlight in this video, claiming a bunch of nonsense about how Ripple, basically he's kind of arguing at its core that Ripple's incentive is not in alignment with XRP holders, which is just a stupid argument. Like, it's just so dumb. It is so dumb. And so here's a post from David Schwartz, one of the creators of XRP and the XRP Ledger. He's currently the CTO at Ripple. You might have heard of him. Well, on October 26, 2017, he shared the two posts on your screen right here. And by the way, this is a few weeks before I never bought my first XRP. I first jumped into crypto November 10th, 2017. And a week later, after doing some research over a handful of days, I bought my first XRP November 17th, 2017. So when he was posting this, I hadn't even heard of it. Little did I know I was about to jump into this world. I'm very thankful I did. It's the best financial decision I've made in my entire life. So anyway, October 26, 2017, David Schwartz wrote, suppose Ripple could spend $100 million now and could reasonably expect it to raise the price of XRP by a penny in the long term. Would we? XRP holders share that same upside without having to pay. That's one reason Ripple's value is much less than the value of the XRP we hold. Yeah, that's certainly true. And the value of Ripple, of course, is going to be less than the value of XRP. And by the way, the value of the XRP they hold, it's not factored in one for one into the what the value of the company is, because it's understood that even if Ripple could just magically at once sell all of that XRP, and they can't because it's an escrow, but even if they could sell all of it, it would just tank the market to such a degree that what it's worth on paper, they'd never realize that. So it has to do with the notional value of XRP. They know they could never get that. And so that's a primary reason that the, if you ever look at what the value is for Ripple, the company, and I don't know what I can't recall what the latest estimate is on that. It's not going to be even close to the value of the XRP that they hold on paper anyway. But here, obviously, he's stating the obvious. Like, don't you think, like, if Ripple can do a thing spending money to make the price of XRP go up, wouldn't they? And obviously, if they do that, isn't that good for the XRP holder? Yeah, because we have overlap in interest, obviously. We as XRP holders with Ripple, of course we do. And so that's why when I jumped into crypto in 2017, yeah, I saw the toxic Bitcoin maximalists arguing that, hey, there's a concentration of supply. They called it centralized, which is the wrong word, but concentration of supply with Ripple, that's a bad thing. What if they just dump the market? And I just sat there thinking in 2017, well, they could do that. They're going to ruin all the good faith and goodwill that they've built up over the years and all the trust they've built. They could do that in theory, but that would be stupid because they have the most to lose if they harm the XRP ecosystem. Why would they do that? It never made sense. And so they haven't. They've sold slowly over a long period of time so as to not harm the market. And the rate of inflation, if you want to call it that, for some years, it's been on par with what Bitcoin's has been less. So once I understood that, I was like, okay, so this is a net plus. These idiots are saying it's a negative. I disagreed in 2017. I was like, no, it's a plus having Ripple here with this concentration, this veritable war chest here, because we have, again, an overlap in interest, right? To me, it's just so freaking obvious. And so somebody named Bryce reposted that and said, Ripple already has 100 million in cash. And it's kind of cute looking back on that, because we know that Ripple ended up with literally billions of dollars worth of cash because like Brad Garlinghouse has publicly stated that. They would have had less back then, of course, even though $100 million, nothing to sneeze at, as they say. Cover your mouth, you got to sneeze. But David Schwartz responded and he said, I can't disclose Ripple's finances beyond what's already been disclosed, but suffice to say, Ripple is well financed. Ripple's business model is to spend money in a way that allows the company to get maximum value for its stash of XRP. This is not a secret. There you go. So that when they spend money, XRP's at the center of this. They want the price of XRP to go up. They've been trying to make that happen since the beginning of the company. He was stating that in 2017. And then you have Brad Garlinghouse here, Ripple CEO. And this is just 3 days ago? October 24th, 2025. He shared this post, and he was talking about Ripple Prime, which I've already covered in a video, so I'm not going to get into it here. But part of his post here 3 days ago reads as follows. I'm reminding you all that XRP sits at the center of everything Ripple does. Lock in. Now, folks, I've been screaming that for years. It's very obvious that Ripple severely wants XRP to do well because, again, if it doesn't, they've got the most to lose. They have more to lose than you. They've got more to lose than me. They've got more to lose than everyone, every single individual actor in the space. By a lot, it's not even close because they have a ton of XRP. And they've been public about it too. Like their plan, they talked about it in maybe it was 2019. I don't really see updates about it. There's hush-hush about this now because I think they just don't want the drama and criticism and stuff. But they shared a plan to basically unload almost all of their XRP over a span of 30 years. It was something I think it might have been 20 years, 30 years, whatever it was. That was 2019. I'm pretty sure it was 30 years. And so it's not that it's staying exactly the course they were projecting what it might be, but it's still going that direction. They're just selling over time. But it's a small percent. It's a tiny percent of volume so as to not shock the market. That's the point. And so everything they're doing, it's with XRP in mind. XRP is at the center of everything Ripple does. I've been saying that for years. It's just common sense. So Credible Crypto, very popular figure in the XRP community with 480,000 followers. He's a fantastic chart analyst. He reposted that comment from Brad and he said, he shared that quote that I just read about, XRP being at the center of things. And then he wrote, said this before and I'll say it again. When an entity holds some $100 billion, he didn't write dollars, but he did mean dollars, or he clarified later. When an entity holds some $100 billion of a crypto asset, XRP, that will slowly be released to them from an automated escrow over the next decade plus, they will do everything in their power to make that crypto asset a success because they are hands down the biggest beneficiary of a higher priced XRP. It's really that simple. Yes, spot on. Why is this so hard for the toxic Bitcoin maximalists to grasp? They're dumping on your head. No, they want a higher price. They're not going to do things that materially harm the XRP ecosystem. You freaking midwits. This is so obvious. But that gets us to this point where we have this guy named Fishy Catfish. Oh, what a name. So he jumped in and he's responding ultimately to Credible Crypto. And he said, XRP being valuable makes it easier for them to drive value to Ripple Labs. There's a huge difference between XRP incidentally being valuable, which helps Ripple, versus Ripple trying to make XRP valuable at the expense of Ripple stock. And so he ends up making the argument, which is stupid, STLLPID stupid, that Ripple cannot actually do things that will drive the value of XRP upward and at the same time the stock price of Ripple up. This is a very stupid argument. As the price of XRP itself goes up, people will be more interested in investing in Ripple. And I know this because I've spoken to people who run funds that have invested a lot in Ripple, the company, and XRP is a major factor. It's because they're a fantastic cheerleader for the entire XRP ecosystem. Ripple just is. It is understood that this is a major attraction if somebody's going to invest in Ripple, the company, and buy stock on secondary markets, which you can do if you're an accredited investor. So this guy's a damn fool. Now, Credible Crypto responded and said, it's not rocket science, bro. They go hand in hand. XRP being valuable makes it easier for them to drive value to Ripple Labs, and the more valuable XRP is, the more value they can drive to Ripple Labs. Spot on. It's obvious. And I know you listening to this, you're like, yeah, that's common sense. This is what we're working with, though. Fishy Catfish, there are a whole ton of people that suffer from the affliction known as XRP derangement syndrome. And I say that because it is very hard for me to believe that somebody could be so stupid as to not understand this very basic, fundamental concept. Motivating factors for a company. How could you not understand something so basic? I mean, I can understand if you've done no research and you've spent 0 seconds thinking about it, but the second somebody points it out to you, you should be like, oh yeah, that does make sense. Oh gosh, I feel like an idiot. I didn't think through that, did I? That would be fun. Like, that's about as far as it can go, though. If you're going to keep pushing back against this, no. You a damn idiot stick at that point. And so he responded to Credible Crypto with this long post. So I'm going to read part of this here. And so this is to Credible Crypto. He said, you literally do not understand the point I am making at all. And I will pause to note, yes, he does. Credible Crypto absolutely understands what Fishy Catfish is saying, but Fishy Catfish is not particularly intelligent, or he's being dishonest. It could be that. I mean, it could be that. But he fights with such vigor. I don't know. It's hard to know these days. Anyway, he says Ripple has created two conflicted sets of competing stakeholders: Ripple Labs shareholders versus XRP holders. Oh, what a dumb comment. He says you can't effectively serve both because there is only a fixed pie of value creation to distribute, which creates an inherent conflict of interest. Their goal is to drive shareholder value for Ripple Labs shareholders, not to make XRP valuable. XRP being valuable makes it easier for them to drive value to Ripple Labs. There's a huge difference between XRP incidentally being valuable, which helps Ripple, versus Ripple trying to make XRP valuable at the expense of Ripple stock. And folks, I understand what he's arguing there. You understand what he's arguing there. Credible Crypto understands what he's arguing there. It's very explicit. It's very easy to understand. It's just a stupid argument. Because Ripple's spending money to make XRP worth more, like say they achieve that absolutely will result in the value of Ripple, the company, being higher. There will be greater demand for Ripple stock. And I know this because I freaking talked to the people that have bought the stock. Like companies. I'm talking about funds. Investment firms. I absolutely know. I've spoken firsthand with them. So I know that this is a piss poor argument. I know this is not in line with reality. And then check this out, though. He says, if Ripple wanted to return value to the XRP token, they would do token buybacks with the profits RLUSD makes. Do they? No. It stays with Ripple shareholders. If Ripple wanted to return value to the XRP token, they would do token buybacks with the profits that Hidden Road, G Treasury, and Standard Custody and Trust make. Do they? No, it stays with Ripple shareholders. Little problem there, though. Ripple's actually been buying back XRP on open markets for many, many, many years. Here's one quick example I found at tips. Came across this article right away. This is one of many examples. This is from February 3rd, 2023. Look at the headline here. This is from Blockworks. Ripple bought $8.4 billion in XRP since SEC lawsuit to support healthy markets. Look at this. Ripple Labs XRP token has dropped 20% since the SEC sued the firm and two top executives over alleged unregistered security sales back in December 2020. And since then, Ripple Labs has poured billions of dollars into buying back the XRP token on secondary markets. Well, that's inconvenient for you, dipshit, isn't it? There you go. Literally buybacks. Like, will Ripple buy back the XRP token? No, they won't. Yeah, they did, buddy. They absolutely did. Right there, Chief. Absolutely they did. And they've been doing it. They've been doing it since was he curious enough to find out if they did it? No. And they've also bought back the shares of their own company too. They've done both. Ripple has absolutely done both because they're that confident that the value of their company is going to go up, that they wanted to buy more on the cheap. And then, that can change. They can always distribute more. But I'm just saying that's what they did because they got confidence in what they're doing. And they also bought a bunch of XRP to the tune of $8.4 billion. Well, how about that? How about that? Fishy catfish. You idiot stick. What the hell? Oh, this really grinds my gears, son. Really grinds my gears. Now, Credible Crypto responded to this. And of course, he understood exactly all this just like I do, just like you do. He said, no, I do understand it completely, but Ripple's success and XRP success are not mutually exclusive. Both can do well at the same time, and both doing well is in the best interest of Ripple. If Ripple can take actions to increase the value of XRP while they have a major stake in it, then they will. It doesn't need to be at the expense of shareholders. Crypto, as a whole, is incredibly speculative in the middle of a massive bull run, and the XRP token can benefit from those tailwinds in a way that shares of a company cannot. If Ripple can invest a few $1 billion to increase the value of the $100 billion worth of XRP they own, they will. Again, it's not rocket science. If I can take actions that cost me even $5 billion to make the value of an asset I hold increase by $50 billion, which I can then use to increase the value that goes to shareholders, I will take those actions, period. And of course, he's right. You can see how easy this is to understand. This is why I'm sitting here wondering, is this guy fishy catfish? Does he believe what he's saying? Or does he just irrationally hate XRP so much that he's willing to lie about it and publicly make arguments that he has to know don't work, but he just does it anyway, hoping that he can fool stupid people? Which is it? Like, it's got to be one of those, right? So he's hoping to trick stupid people and he knows that he's lying, or he himself, his brain is so warped at this point, he's suffering from XRP derangement syndrome, that he just doesn't see it. Man, it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild, folks. So, but either way, obviously, Ripple's, a very positive, has a very positive impact on the entire XRP ecosystem. We have overlap in interest as XRP holders, unquestionably the case. And so these are multiple ways in which I'm showing you money absolutely is flowing into XRP. Unquestionably it is. All of this is going to keep driving the price of XRP higher over time. That's what I believe anyway. I mean, if I didn't believe that, I wouldn't be investing in XRP myself. So nobody knows what the price of XRP will be, including me. But I do believe that what is most probable is that it's going to keep trending. Keep letting time pass. It's going to trend on a chart up and to the right. Because the fundamentals for XRP have never been stronger. And it's just so striking to see somebody like this. And there was way more arguments than this. I even argued with him a bit. But it's just utter nonsense. It's just silly nonsense. So I'm glad that I have this channel so that I can kind of bitch about it. I mean, let's be real, like, bitching about stuff is the reason that the internet exists. That's why it was created. In fact, it's a fun fact. I enjoy it. It's kind of cathartic to hop on here behind the mic and bitch up a storm. It's a good time. But I'm glad I can set the record straight too, because facts are facts. And I'm glad I can correct people like this when they say nonsense about XRP. You guys tell me what you think, but it's just nice knowing we're on the right side of history and that we have brains. And this guy, if he has one, it's non-functional. Or he's just lying. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say. Right? That would be a very, very, very bad idea.